The human ship called Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the dark space between stars. It was a big ship, almost a kilometer long, with many levels and hundreds of rooms. More than 300 humans lived and worked on this ship. They had been traveling for almost 2 years now, meeting new alien species and trying to make friends with them. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the bridge and looked at the stars through the big window. She was a woman of 52 years with gray hair and calm eyes. She had spent most of her life in space, and she loved it. But this mission was different from all the others. This time, they were carrying very important guests. The Virith had come aboard 3 weeks ago. The Virith were a species that looked something like the cats of Earth, but they walked on 2 legs and stood as tall as humans. Their bodies were covered in soft fur of different colors. Some had silver fur, some had brown, and some had fur the color of dark honey. They had large eyes that could see in the dark, pointed ears that moved when they heard sounds, and long tails that showed their feelings. The Virith were one of the most respected species in the galaxy. They sat on the Galactic Council, the group that made rules for all the species that traveled between stars. When the Virith agreed to send a delegation to study humans, everyone knew it was very important. If the Virith liked humans, other species would start to trust humans too. Hannah Cole was the person in charge of making the Virith feel welcome. She was 34 years old, with dark hair and a friendly smile. Her job was called Chief Diplomatic Officer, which meant she had to understand what the Virith needed and make sure they got it. For 3 weeks, Hannah had worked very hard. She learned how to greet the Virith properly. She learned what foods they could eat and what foods would make them sick. She learned that they liked quiet spaces and soft lighting. She organized formal dinners and important meetings where the Virith and the human leaders talked about trade and cooperation. Everything was going well. The Virith ambassador, a female named Rethka, seemed pleased with the arrangements. The negotiations were moving forward slowly but steadily. But there was one thing Hannah had not expected. Ambassador Rethka had brought her children. In Virith culture, this was completely normal. The Virith believed that families should never be separated, even during important work. So when Rethka came to the human ship, she brought her 3 cubs with her. The oldest was named Torath, and he was about 8 years old in human terms. The middle one was Feneth, about 6 years old. And the youngest was little Kittis, only 4 years old with silver fur just like her mother. At first, Hannah was worried about the cubs. How would she keep young alien children entertained on a spaceship? But the cubs seemed happy enough. They stayed close to their mother during the day and played quietly in their quarters at night. Or so Hannah thought. Lieutenant Daniel Price was in charge of keeping the ship running properly. He was a tall man of 40 years with a beard and rough hands from years of fixing machines. Every morning he checked the supply rooms to make sure everything was in its right place. Every morning, the numbers matched what they should be, until they did not. Daniel stood in Storage Bay 7 and looked at his tablet computer with confusion on his face. The numbers were wrong. According to the computer, this room should have 600 pairs of thermal socks. These were special socks, thick and soft, given to crew members to keep their feet warm in the cold parts of the ship. But when Daniel counted the socks, he found only 553 pairs. 47 pairs of socks were missing. Daniel scratched his beard and thought about this. Socks were not valuable items. Nobody would steal socks to sell them. And the crew had plenty of socks already. Why would anyone take more? He decided to check the security recordings. The security system on the Horizon's Edge recorded everything that happened in every room. Daniel sat in his small office and played the recordings from the past week. He watched people come and go from the storage bay. Nothing unusual. Then he saw something that made him lean forward in his chair. It was late at night when most of the crew was sleeping. The door to Storage Bay 7 opened slowly. A small figure crept inside, moving on 4 legs instead of 2. It was one of the Virith cubs, the little one with silver fur, Kittis. Daniel watched as the cub looked around carefully, making sure no one was watching. Then she went to the container that held the socks. She opened it, grabbed several pairs of socks in her small paws, and stuffed them into a bag she carried on her back. Her tail was high in the air, which Daniel had learned meant a Virith was happy or excited. Then Kittis closed the container and ran out of the room as fast as her little legs could carry her. Daniel watched the recording 3 more times. He was not angry. He was confused. What did a Virith cub want with human socks? He went to find Hannah. Hannah was in her office, reading reports about the latest negotiation session. When Daniel came in and closed the door, she knew something was happening. "We have a situation," Daniel said. "A small furry situation with a tail." He showed her the recording. Hannah watched the little cub steal the socks, and she felt her confusion grow. "I do not understand," she said. "The Virith have their own clothing. They do not need human socks. And if they needed something, Ambassador Rethka would simply ask for it." "The ambassador does not know," Daniel said. "At least, I do not think she knows. This looks like something the cub is doing in secret." Hannah rubbed her forehead. This was not the kind of problem she had trained for. Stolen socks, sneaky alien children. None of the diplomatic textbooks had mentioned this. "We need to find out what the cub is doing with the socks," she said. "But we must be careful. If we accuse the ambassador's child of stealing, it could damage our relationship with the Virith. This is a sensitive situation." Daniel nodded. "I can put more cameras near the storage bay. Maybe we can see where the cub takes the socks." "Do it," Hannah said, "and do not tell anyone else yet. Not until we understand what is happening." Daniel left to set up the cameras. Hannah sat in her office and worried. The relationship with the Virith was going so well. Trade agreements were being discussed. Cultural exchanges were being planned. Everything humanity had worked for was finally coming together. And now a 4-year-old alien cub was stealing socks. Hannah laughed a little, even though she was worried. The universe was a strange place. That night, she could not sleep. She kept thinking about the recording. The cub had looked so happy, so excited. Her tail had been wagging like a dog that found a treat. Whatever Kittis was doing with the socks, she was enjoying it very much. The next morning, Daniel came to her office again. This time, his face showed something different. He was not confused anymore. He was trying very hard not to laugh. "I found where the socks are going," he said, "and I think you need to see this for yourself." He would not tell her more. He just asked her to follow him to Deck 7. As they walked through the corridors of the ship, Hannah prepared herself for anything. Maybe the cubs were building a nest. Maybe they were eating the socks. Maybe the socks had some chemical that Virith found pleasant. Her mind went through every possibility. None of them came close to the truth. They reached Deck 7. This was a quiet part of the ship, mostly used for storage. The corridors here were long and straight, with smooth floors made of shiny polymer material. The floors were designed to be easy to clean, so they were very smooth and slippery. Hannah heard strange sounds coming from around the corner. High-pitched sounds. Laughter maybe, but not human laughter. And something else. A sliding sound, like something moving fast across the floor. She turned the corner and stopped walking. 3 Virith cubs were lined up at the end of the long corridor. Each one had thick human socks on their back paws. Little Kittis wore 2 different socks that did not match, one with blue stripes and one that was solid green. As Hannah watched, the cubs dropped down to all 4 paws. They started running toward her, building up speed. Then, all at once, they tucked their legs underneath their bodies and slid forward on their sock-covered paws. They glided down the smooth corridor like small furry rockets. Their fur streamed behind them. Their mouths were open wide, showing small teeth and expressions of pure joy. They made sounds of happiness that needed no translation. The cubs slid for almost 30 meters before they tumbled into a pile at the end of the corridor, tangled together in a mess of fur and tails and mismatched socks. And then they got up and ran back to do it again. Hannah stood there with her mouth open. Daniel stood next to her, his shoulders shaking with silent laughter. The cubs noticed the humans watching them. For a moment, they froze, eyes wide. Kittis looked down at the socks on her paws, then back up at Hannah, then back at the socks. Hannah did not know what to say. She had studied Virith culture for months. She had read every book, watched every recording, talked to every expert. Nobody had told her that Virith cubs liked to slide on floors, because, she realized, nobody knew. This was new. This was something that could only happen when Virith met humans, when alien cubs found human socks, when smooth polymer floors met furry paws. This was first contact of a different kind. Before Hannah could decide what to do, little Kittis walked toward her on her hind legs. The cub looked up at Hannah with large golden eyes. Her ears were flat against her head, which Hannah knew meant the cub was nervous or scared. "Please," Kitty said in careful, practiced English, "please do not tell Mother. The socks make the sliding so good. I did not mean to take without asking. I will give them back. Please." Hannah looked at the small alien child with stolen socks on her paws and worry in her eyes. And in that moment, the diplomat in Hannah stepped aside, and the human in Hannah took over. She knelt down so she was at the cub's level. "Kittis," she said gently, "can you show me how the sliding works?" The cub's ears went up. Her tail started to wave. Her whole face changed from fear to hope. "You want to learn?" Kittis asked. "I want to learn," Hannah said. And that was how the chief diplomatic officer of the human ship Horizon's Edge ended up with thermal socks on her feet, sliding down a corridor on Deck 7 with 3 Virath cubs who screamed with delight beside her. Daniel watched from the corner, recording everything on his tablet. This, he thought, was going to be a very interesting report. The news about the sliding cubs spread through the ship faster than any official announcement could travel. By the next morning, almost everyone on the Horizon's Edge knew about Deck 7. Crew members found excuses to walk through that section of the ship. They would slow down as they passed the long corridor, hoping to catch a glimpse of the furry little aliens gliding across the smooth floor. Engineer Megan Torres was one of the first to see them. She was a young woman of 28 years, with short brown hair and curious eyes. Her job was to maintain the ship's engines, but she spent her free time exploring every corner of the vessel. When she heard about the sliding cubs, she went to Deck 7 immediately. What she found made her laugh so hard that tears ran down her face. The 3 cubs had set up what looked like a racing course. They had found empty containers somewhere and arranged them at the end of the corridor like targets. The game seemed simple. A cub would slide down the corridor and try to knock over as many containers as possible. Little Kittis was surprisingly good at it. Her small body could build up a lot of speed, and she had learned to aim herself during the slide. When she hit the containers, they flew in all directions, and she would jump up and down with joy. The older cubs, Toreth and Feneth, were not as good at the game. Toreth was too heavy, and he would stop sliding before he reached the containers. Feneth was too light, and she would spin off course and hit the walls instead of the targets. But none of them seemed to care about winning. They were having too much fun. Megan watched for a while, then made a decision. She went back to her quarters, took off her work boots, and put on the thickest socks she owned. Then she returned to Deck 7. "Can I play?" she asked the cubs. The cubs looked at each other. Then they looked at Megan's sock-covered feet. Then Feneth, the middle cub, spoke. "You are very big," she said in careful English. "You will slide very far." "Let us find out," Megan said. She walked to the starting point, crouched down like she had seen the cubs do, and pushed herself forward. The smooth floor grabbed her socks and pulled her along. She slid faster and faster, the walls becoming a blur beside her, the wind pushing against her face. She crashed into the containers with a tremendous noise and ended up on her back, looking at the ceiling, laughing. The cubs were silent for a moment. Then they erupted in cheers. "Again!" Kitty shouted. "Human friend must do it again." Megan did it again, and again. By the 5th slide, 3 more crew members had joined her, all of them in socks, all of them sliding and laughing and crashing into things. The noise attracted more attention. People came to see what was happening. Some of them stayed to watch. Some of them went to get their own socks. By lunchtime, there were 12 humans and 3 Virith cubs taking turns sliding down the corridor on Deck 7. Hannah Cole heard about this development while she was eating in the officer's dining room. A young crew member ran in, breathless with excitement, and told her that half the engineering team was playing with the alien children. Hannah put down her fork and sighed. She had kept the sock situation quiet for one day. Now it was becoming a ship-wide event. She would have to tell Ambassador Rethka. She found the ambassador in the Virith quarters, reading something on a tablet device. Rethka looked up when Hannah entered, her golden eyes calm and patient. "Officer Cole," Rethka said, "you look troubled. Has something happened?" Hannah took a deep breath. "Ambassador, I need to tell you something about your children." She explained everything: the missing socks, the security recordings, the sliding on Deck 7, the fact that half the crew was now participating in the activity. As Hannah talked, she watched Rethka's face carefully. The ambassador's expression did not change. Her ears did not move. Her tail stayed still. Hannah could not tell if Rethka was angry, amused, or completely indifferent. When Hannah finished, there was a long silence. Then Rethka stood up. "Show me," she said. They walked together through the corridors of the ship. Hannah led the way to Deck 7, her heart beating fast. She did not know how the ambassador would react. Would she be angry that her children had taken things without asking? Would she be embarrassed that they were playing in public? Would she order them to stop? They turned the corner to the long corridor. The scene had grown even more chaotic. There were now at least 20 humans sliding with the cubs. Someone had brought music, and it played from a small speaker. The containers had been replaced with soft cushions because too many people were crashing too hard. Several crew members had formed teams and were racing against each other. In the middle of it all, little Kittis was teaching a large human man how to spin during a slide. The man was crewman Noah Bennett, a big fellow who worked in the cargo bay. He outweighed Kittis by at least 100 kilograms. But the tiny cub was patient, showing him how to shift his weight, how to turn his body, how to control the spin. When Noah tried the technique and spun perfectly down the corridor, Kittis jumped up and down and clapped her small paws together. Hannah watched Ambassador Rethka watch this scene. The ambassador's ears slowly moved forward, which Hannah had learned was a sign of interest. Her tail began to wave gently back and forth. Her whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "The small foot coverings," Rethka said slowly. "They reduce the friction between paw and floor." "Yes," Hannah said. "The thermal socks are made of a material that slides easily on polymer surfaces. It is meant to keep feet warm, but apparently it also works very well for gliding." Rethka nodded slowly. "And the humans enjoy this activity as well?" Hannah looked at the corridor full of laughing, sliding people. "It seems they do." "Interesting," Rethka said. She was quiet for a long moment. Hannah waited, afraid to speak. Then Rethka turned to her and asked a question that Hannah did not expect. "Where might I acquire a pair of these soft foot coverings?" Hannah blinked. "You want to try sliding?" "I am curious," Rethka said. Her whiskers twitched again. "My cubs seem to find great joy in this activity. I would like to understand why." 20 minutes later, Ambassador Rethka stood at the starting point of the corridor with thick blue socks on her back paws. Her 3 cubs stood beside her, their faces showing expressions of pure disbelief. "Mother," Torath said, "you do not have to do this. It is just a game." "I know," Rethka said. "That is why I want to do it." She crouched down, pushed forward, and slid. She was not graceful. She wobbled and nearly fell twice. Her arms waved wildly as she tried to keep her balance. Her tail stuck straight out behind her like a rudder on a boat. But she made it almost 30 meters before she came to a stop. And when she turned around, her face showed something that Hannah had never seen on a Virath before. Her mouth was open wide, showing her teeth. Her eyes were bright. Her whole body seemed lighter somehow. She was smiling. A real, genuine, joyful smile. "Again," Rethka said. "I want to do it again." Her cubs screamed with delight and ran to join her. That evening, Hannah wrote a report for Captain Bennett. She tried to explain what had happened, but the words seemed too dry, too official. How could she describe the sight of a dignified alien ambassador sliding down a corridor with socks on her paws? How could she capture the sound of Virath cubs teaching human adults how to play? How could she explain that the most important diplomatic breakthrough of the mission had come not from negotiations but from stolen socks? She gave up trying to make it sound professional. "Captain," she wrote, "the Virath ambassador went sliding today." She smiled. "I did not know they could smile like that. I think something important has happened, but I do not know how to explain it. Please come to Deck 7 tomorrow morning." You need to see this for yourself. Captain Bennett read the report in her quarters that night. She read it twice. Then she went to her closet and pulled out her thickest pair of socks. If her diplomatic officer said this was important, then it was important. And Laura Bennett had not become a starship captain by ignoring important things. The next morning, the captain of the Horizon's Edge joined the sliding. She was not good at it. She fell down 3 times. She crashed into the wall once. A Virith cub half her size had to help her get back up. But by the end of the morning, she understood what Hannah had been trying to say. The Virith were different when they were sliding. The formal, careful expressions they wore during negotiations disappeared. The stiff posture they maintained during official functions relaxed. They laughed. They joked. They touched humans casually, something they had never done before. And the humans were different too. They stopped seeing the Virith as strange aliens to be careful around. They started seeing them as friends, as playmates, as people who liked the same silly things that humans liked. Captain Bennett sat in the viewing area that had been set up near the corridor. Ambassador Rethka sat beside her. Below them, crew members and cubs slid back and forth, their laughter mixing together. "Ambassador," Bennett said, "I must admit I did not expect our diplomatic mission to involve sock sliding." Rethka's whiskers twitched. "Neither did I, Captain, but I am not disappointed." "May I ask you something?" Bennett said. "Your people are known for being serious, formal, dignified. This activity seems very different from that image." Rethka was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. "My people were not always so serious," she said. "Long ago, when we were young as a species, we played like this all the time. We chased each other through forests. We slid down hills covered in leaves. We found joy in simple movements and silly games." "What changed?" Bennett asked. "We became civilized," Rethka said. "We built cities. We developed technology. We joined the galactic community. And somewhere along the way, we forgot how to play. We became so focused on being respected that we forgot how to be happy." She watched her cubs slide past, tangled together in a ball of fur and laughter. "My people need to remember," Rethka said softly. "We need to remember that joy is not childish, that play is not a waste of time, that sometimes the most important things in life are the things that have no practical purpose at all." She turned to look at Captain Bennett. "Your species has not forgotten this," she said. "Humans still play. Humans still find joy in simple things. You slide down corridors with alien children, and you do not feel embarrassed. You laugh at yourselves and with each other. This is a gift, Captain. A gift that my people lost long ago." Bennett did not know what to say. She had thought of humanity's playfulness as a weakness sometimes, a sign that humans were not mature enough to stand beside the ancient species of the galaxy. But here was a Virith ambassador telling her it was a strength. "Perhaps," Bennett said carefully, "our species can learn from each other. You can teach us your wisdom and experience. We can teach you how to slide in socks." Rethka's whiskers twitched in what Bennett now recognized as Virith laughter. "I think," the ambassador said, "that this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Below them, a human and a Virith cub raced down the corridor side by side. The human won by a small margin. The cub demanded a rematch. They lined up to try again, and somewhere in the formal reports that would eventually be sent to the Galactic Council, a footnote would mention that human-Virith relations had improved significantly during this period. It would not mention the socks, but everyone who was there would remember. 2 weeks passed, and the Horizon's Edge was transformed. What had started as a secret game in a storage corridor had become the most popular activity on the ship. Every day, during designated recreation hours, the long corridors of Deck 7 filled with humans and Virith sliding together. The sound of laughter echoed through the metal walls. The formal atmosphere of a diplomatic mission had melted away like ice under a warm sun. Lieutenant Commander Greg Santos was responsible for scheduling. He was a man of 45 years with gray at his temples and a serious expression that rarely changed. His job was to make sure the ship ran smoothly, that everyone was where they needed to be, that no time was wasted. When he first heard about the sliding, he thought it was a distraction, a waste of valuable crew time. He almost wrote a memo recommending that it be stopped. Then Captain Bennett ordered him to try it himself. Greg stood at the end of the corridor with socks on his feet and doubt in his heart. He had not played like this since he was a child. He felt foolish. He felt too old for such things. Then little Kittis took his hand in her small paw. "It is easy," she said. "Just push and let go. Do not think too much." Greg pushed. He let go. He slid down the corridor at a speed that made his stomach flip. He waved his arms wildly. He made a sound that might have been a scream or might have been a laugh. He was not sure which. When he stopped, his heart was beating fast and his face hurt from smiling. "Again," he said, surprising himself. "Let me try again." After that, Greg did not write any memos about stopping the sliding. Instead, he created an official schedule. Slide times, he called them. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, different corridors on different days so the whole ship could participate. The Virith delegation had grown more comfortable as well. Ambassador Rethka no longer spent all her time in formal meetings. She would often be found on Deck 7, sliding with her cubs, talking casually with human crew members. The stiff diplomatic language she had used in the first weeks was replaced by something warmer, more natural. The other adult Virith followed her example. Trade negotiator Venos, a large male with brown fur and a serious manner, was discovered teaching a group of human engineers a complex spinning technique. Cultural attaché Mira, a young female with spotted fur, spent hours racing against any human who would challenge her. Dr. Patricia Vance, the ship's chief medical officer, was fascinated by the whole phenomenon. She was a woman of 50 years with white hair and sharp eyes that noticed everything. Her job was to keep everyone healthy, which meant she paid attention to both bodies and minds. "This is remarkable," she told Hannah one evening in the medical bay. "Look at these stress readings." She showed Hannah a chart on her computer screen. It tracked the stress hormones in the blood of crew members over the past month. The levels had been high during the first weeks of the Virith visit, when everyone was nervous about making a good impression. Then the lines on the chart began to drop sharply. "That is when the sliding started," Patricia said, pointing to the change. "Stress levels have decreased by almost 40% across the entire crew. People are sleeping better. They are eating better. They are reporting higher levels of happiness in their daily logs." "Is sliding really that good for you?" Hannah asked. "The physical activity helps," Patricia said, "but I think it is more than that. Humans need to play. We need to do things that have no purpose except to make us happy. Most of us forget this as we get older. We think play is only for children, but our bodies and minds still need it." She pulled up another set of data. "The Virith are showing even more dramatic changes," she said. "When they first came aboard, their stress hormones were extremely high. Their sleep patterns were disrupted. Their appetite was poor. I was worried about them, honestly. I thought the trip might be making them sick." "And now?" Hannah asked. "Now they are healthier than when they arrived, especially the cubs. Whatever this sliding activity does to Virith physiology, it seems to be very good for them." Hannah thought about this. The diplomatic mission had always been about trade agreements and political alliances. But maybe there was something else happening here, something deeper, something that official reports would never capture. She decided to talk to Ambassador Rethka about it. She found the ambassador in the observation lounge, watching stars drift past the big window. Rethka had her youngest cub in her lap. Kittis was asleep, her small body curled up, her back paws still wearing a pair of bright green socks. Hannah sat down nearby. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, not awkward. That alone showed how much things had changed. "Ambassador," Hannah said finally, "may I ask you something personal?" Rethka's ears turned toward her, showing she was listening. "You may ask." "Your people have been watching humans for a long time. You studied us before you agreed to this exchange program. What did you expect to find?" Rethka was quiet for a moment, stroking her sleeping cub's fur. "We expected to find a young species," she said. "Energetic, creative, perhaps a little reckless. Your technology impressed us. Your art and music intrigued us. Your history showed both great kindness and great cruelty, like most species. What made you decide to meet us in person? Rethka's whiskers twitched. A video recording. Hannah tilted her head in surprise. A video? Yes. One of our observers captured it on your home planet many years ago. It showed human children playing in water that fell from machines. Artificial rain, I believe you call it. Sprinklers, Hannah said. Children playing in sprinklers. Yes. The children were screaming. At first, our analysts thought they were in danger. Then we realized they were screaming with joy. They were running through the water, spinning, falling down, getting up again. They were doing nothing useful, nothing productive. They were just happy. Rethka looked at Hannah with her golden eyes. Our council studied that recording for a long time. We watched it many times. And finally, we understood something important about your species. What did you understand? That humans have not forgotten how to be happy for no reason. That you still know how to play. That you can find joy in simple, silly, useless things and not feel ashamed of it. She looked down at her sleeping cub. My people used to be like that, she said softly. Long ago, before we became a great civilization. We used to play in rivers and chase each other through tall grass and slide down muddy hills. We used to laugh for no reason and dance without music and be silly without worrying what others would think. What happened? We grew up. As a species, I mean. We became serious. We became dignified. We joined the galactic community and learned to behave properly. We stopped playing because we thought playing was childish. We stopped being silly because we thought silly was weak. Her voice became sad. We forgot that joy is not childish. We forgot that play is not weak. We became respected and admired across the galaxy, but we also became tired, stressed, unhappy. My cubs are different from how I was at their age. They are more anxious, more careful. They have fewer memories of pure, simple fun. She looked at Hannah again. And then your cubs showed them your soft socks, and they remembered. My children remembered how to play. How to be silly. How to find joy in something as simple as sliding across a floor. Rethka's voice grew thick with emotion that Hannah had never heard from her before. You have given my children a gift, she said. You have given them back something that our civilization stole from them. I cannot tell you how grateful I am. Hannah did not know what to say. She had been trained for many kinds of diplomatic situations, negotiations, conflicts, misunderstandings. But she had not been trained for this. For an alien ambassador crying quietly while thanking her for socks. Ambassador, Hannah said gently, I think perhaps your people and mine can help each other. You have wisdom and experience that we lack. You can teach us to be more careful, more thoughtful, more patient. And maybe we can teach you to be more playful, more silly. More willing to find joy in simple things. Rethka nodded slowly. I think you are right. I think this is why our peoples were meant to meet. She looked out at the stars. When I return to my homeworld, she said, I will bring socks with me. Many, many socks. And I will show my people what we have forgotten. I will teach them to slide again. Hannah smiled. I am sure they will love it. They will resist at first, Rethka said. They will say it is undignified. They will say it is childish. They will worry about what other species will think. And then they will try it, Hannah said, and they will understand. Yes, Rethka agreed. And then they will understand. They sat together in silence, watching the stars. Below them, somewhere in the ship, the sounds of laughter and sliding could still be heard. Humans and Virath. Playing together, being silly together, finding joy together. The official reports would say that the diplomatic mission was a success because of carefully negotiated trade agreements and cultural exchange protocols. The truth was simpler. The diplomatic mission was a success because of socks. And because sometimes the most important thing you can do for another species is remind them how to play. That night, Hannah wrote in her personal journal, Today I learned something about diplomacy that no school ever taught me. I learned that sometimes the best way to build a bridge between peoples is not with words or treaties or formal agreements. Sometimes the best way is to slide down a corridor together and laugh until your stomach hurts. Sometimes the best diplomacy is play. She paused and thought about the ambassador crying in the observation lounge. She thought about the cubs teaching human adults how to spin during a slide. She thought about the serious Virath negotiator doing tricks for the entertainment of human engineers. Maybe that is what humanity can offer the galaxy, she wrote. Not our technology or our military or our resources. Maybe what we can offer is the reminder that life should include joy, that play matters, that being silly is not weak, but strong. She closed her journal and went to find her socks. There were still 2 hours of slide time left, and she did not want to miss it. Not everyone on the horizon's edge was happy about the sock sliding. Commander Victor Reyes was the ship's executive officer, second in command after Captain Bennett. He was a man of 48 years with a square jaw and eyes that rarely smiled. His job was to make sure the ship followed rules and regulations. He believed in discipline. He believed in order. He believed that every activity should have a purpose. The sliding had no purpose. It was chaos dressed up as diplomacy, and Victor did not like it at all. He had been patient for 2 weeks. He had watched crew members abandon their duties to go slide with alien children. He had seen officers forget their uniforms and walk around in socks. He had heard laughter echoing through corridors that should have been quiet. Then, one afternoon, a Virath cub crashed into an important equipment panel while sliding, and Victor decided that enough was enough. The damage was minor, a few scratches on the surface. A small alert that triggered and then reset itself. Nothing that affected the ship's operations. But Victor saw it as proof that the sliding was dangerous. Proof that it needed to be controlled. He called a meeting of the senior officers. "This has gone too far," he said, standing at the head of the conference table. "We are a diplomatic vessel on an important mission. We are not a playground. We need protocols, rules, boundaries." Hannah sat across from him, her back straight. "Commander, I understand your concerns, but the sliding has become an important part of our relationship with the Virath. If we restrict it now, they might see it as a rejection." "Then they need to understand that friendship has limits," Victor said. "We cannot let our ship fall apart just because some alien children discovered a fun way to use our floors." "The ship is not falling apart," said Lieutenant Daniel Price. "I checked. The damage to the panel was cosmetic only. Nothing critical was affected." "This time," Victor said. "What about next time? What about when someone slides into a power conduit? What about when a cub trips and hurts themselves? We have a duty to keep everyone safe." Captain Bennett raised her hand for silence. She had been listening without speaking, her face showing nothing of her thoughts. "Victor raises valid concerns," she said. "Safety must be a priority. But so must our diplomatic mission. Hannah is right that restricting the Virath could damage our relationship." She looked around the table. "What solutions can we find that address both concerns?" Dr. Patricia Vance spoke up. "What if we created dedicated sliding areas, spaces designed specifically for the activity with proper safety features, smoother floors, padded walls, no sensitive equipment nearby?" "That would require significant resources," Victor said. "Time, materials, personnel." "Resources we have," Captain Bennett said, "and resources well spent if they help us succeed in our mission." "We could convert one of the cargo bays," Daniel said. "Bay 12 is mostly empty right now. It has long, straight walls. We could install new flooring, add cushioning, remove anything breakable, make it safe and fun at the same time." Victor frowned, but Hannah could see him thinking about it. He was not an unreasonable man. He just needed to feel that safety was being addressed. "If we do this," Victor said slowly, "there need to be clear rules, designated hours, adult supervision when cubs are sliding, no sliding in operational areas of the ship." "That sounds fair," Hannah said. "Ambassador Rethka will understand the need for safety protocols. She is a parent. She wants her children protected too." Captain Bennett nodded. "Then we have a plan. Daniel, Patricia, I want a detailed proposal for the sliding facility by the end of the week. Hannah, talk to the ambassador about the changes. Frame it as an upgrade, not a restriction. Victor, draft safety protocols that protect the ship without making our guests feel unwelcome." The meeting ended with assignments for everyone. As the officers filed out, Captain Bennett caught Hannah's arm. "You did well," she said quietly. "You defended the relationship without attacking Victor. That takes skill." "Victor is not the enemy," Hannah said. He is doing his job. He wants to keep people safe. I cannot fault him for that. Exactly, Bennett said. Good diplomacy is not about defeating opponents. It is about finding solutions that honor everyone's concerns. Remember that. Hannah nodded and left to find Ambassador Rethka. She found the ambassador on Deck 7, watching her cubs slide with a group of human children. The human families on board had become regular participants in the sliding activities. Parents watched their children play with alien cubs as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Ambassador, Hannah said, may I speak with you about something? Rethka nodded and followed her to a quiet corner. Hannah explained the situation. The accident with the equipment panel, the safety concerns, the plan to create a dedicated sliding facility. As she spoke, she watched Rethka's face carefully. The ambassador listened without interrupting. Her expression remained calm. When Hannah finished, Rethka was quiet for a moment. Your Commander Reyes, she said. He is worried about safety? Yes, Hannah said. He means well. He wants to protect everyone. This is good, Rethka said. A leader who cares about safety is a good leader. I do not blame him for his concerns. Hannah felt relief wash over her. You are not offended? Why would I be offended? He is doing his duty, and his concerns are valid. My cubs are young and sometimes careless. It is right that there should be rules to keep them safe. She tilted her head thoughtfully. In fact, she said, I should have suggested such rules myself. On my homeworld, we have designated play areas for cubs. It never occurred to me to ask for the same thing here. I was too caught up in enjoying the sliding myself. Her whiskers twitched in what Hannah recognized as embarrassment. Please tell Commander Reyes that I support his proposal, Rethka said. Tell him I am grateful that he cares about the safety of my children. And tell him that I would like to help design the new facility, if he would welcome my input. Hannah smiled. I will tell him. I think he will be pleased. Your species is interesting, Rethka said. You have learned to balance joy and responsibility. You can be playful without being careless, silly without being stupid. This is not easy. Many species either become too serious or too chaotic. Humans seem to find a middle way. We try, Hannah said. We do not always succeed, but we try. Rethka nodded slowly. Perhaps this is another lesson my people can learn from yours. How to have fun while still being safe. How to play while still being responsible. How to enjoy life without losing control of it. Over the next week, the new sliding facility took shape. Cargo Bay 12 was transformed. The old metal flooring was covered with smooth polymer panels, specially designed for optimal sliding. The walls were lined with thick cushioning in bright colors. Viewing areas were built along the sides, with comfortable seating for spectators. Someone installed a timing system so people could race against each other and compare their times. Someone else set up a music system that played cheerful tunes during sliding hours. A snack station appeared near the entrance, offering drinks and small foods for hungry sliders. The humans called it the Glide Zone. The Virith called it the Hall of Happy Feet. Commander Reyes personally inspected the facility before it opened. He walked the length of the sliding track, checking for any hazards. He tested the wall padding by leaning against it hard. He examined the viewing areas to make sure no one could fall onto the track. When he was satisfied, he signed the safety approval with his formal stamp. Then, to everyone's surprise, he asked for a pair of socks. I should understand what I'm approving, he said gruffly when people stared at him. How can I make safety rules for an activity I have never tried? He walked to the starting line. He crouched down. He pushed himself forward. He slid faster than he expected. He waved his arms. He made a sound that might have been a surprised yelp. He crashed into the padded wall at the end of the track and bounced backward, landing on his back. For a moment, everyone was silent. Then Victor Reyes began to laugh. It was a strange sound. Most of the crew had never heard him laugh before. It started as a small chuckle and grew into a full belly laugh that shook his whole body. That, he said when he could speak again, was ridiculous. He got up, walked back to the starting line, and slid again. By the end of the day, Commander Victor Reyes had become one of the fastest sliders on the ship. The dedication ceremony for the glide zone took place on a Sunday afternoon. Almost everyone on the ship attended. Humans stood beside Virith. Officers stood beside crew members. Adults stood beside children and cubs. Captain Bennett made a short speech. When this mission began, she said, we hope to build diplomatic ties with the Virith. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, important, serious work. She smiled. We did not expect that our most successful initiative would involve socks. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But that is humanity for you, Bennett continued. We build warships and we build playgrounds. We negotiate treaties and we invent games. We believe that joy matters. That play is not a waste of time. That sometimes the most important things in life have no practical purpose at all. She turned to Ambassador Rethka. Ambassador, would you do us the honor of the first official slide? Rethka stepped forward. Her back paws were covered in silver socks that matched her fur. It would be my pleasure, Captain, she said. But I must warn you. My cubs have been training me. I have become quite competitive. She walked to the starting line, crouched down, and launched herself down the track with surprising grace. She glided smoothly, her arms extended for balance, her tail streaming behind her. She came to a stop near the far end to thunderous applause, and the glide zone was officially open. What followed was controlled chaos. Cubs and children raced against each other. Adults tried to learn new techniques. Teams formed and competed. Records were set and broken. Hannah watched from the viewing area, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. A month ago, she had been worried about missing socks. Now she was watching two species play together like old friends. The formal diplomacy was still happening. The trade agreements were still being negotiated. But something else had happened too. Something harder to measure but more important. Trust. Real trust. The kind that comes from laughing together, playing together, being silly together. Commander Reyes sat down beside her, still wearing his socks. I owe you an apology, he said. Hannah looked at him in surprise. For what? For being so resistant. I thought the sliding was a distraction from our mission. I was wrong. It is part of our mission. Maybe the most important part. You were not wrong to worry about safety, Hannah said. You were doing your job. Yes, but I was also afraid. He paused. Afraid of looking foolish. Afraid of losing control. Afraid that if I let myself play, people would stop respecting me. And now? Victor smiled. It looked strange on his face, like a muscle that had not been used in years. Now I understand that I can be professional and playful, responsible and joyful, serious about my duties and silly during my free time. He shook his head. It took a bunch of alien cubs to teach me that. Who knew socks could be so educational? Below them, on the sliding track, little Kittis was teaching a human boy how to spin. Her voice floated up to them, patient and encouraging. Just like that. Do not be afraid. Let yourself go. The socks will catch you. Hannah smiled. The socks will catch you. That, she thought, might be the best diplomatic advice she had ever heard. The Virith delegation stayed on the horizon's edge for 3 months. In that time, the glide zone became the heart of the ship. Every day, humans and Virath gathered there to slide, race, play, and laugh. Records were broken, friendships were made. A small, furry cub named Kittis held the distance record for almost 2 weeks until a human engineer named Megan figured out a new technique and beat her by 3 centimeters. Kittis demanded a rematch. She practiced for 4 days. Then she took back the record by 5 centimeters and did a victory dance that made everyone laugh. The formal diplomatic work continued alongside the play. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchange protocols were established. Plans were made for future visits, future cooperation, future friendship. But when people talked about the mission years later, they did not talk about trade agreements. They talked about socks. On the last day before the Virith were scheduled to depart, Captain Bennett organized a farewell ceremony in the glide zone. The whole ship gathered. Someone had decorated the walls with banners in both human and Virath colors. Someone else had prepared a feast with foods from both cultures. Ambassador Rethka stood at the center of the room with her 3 cubs beside her. The cubs looked sad. Torath, the oldest, was trying hard to appear dignified and grown-up, but his tail drooped behind him. Feneth, the middle child, kept glancing at the human friends she had made, as if trying to memorize their faces. And little Kittis simply cried, tears running down her silver fur, her small paws clutching a pair of worn blue socks that she refused to let go. Captain Bennett stepped forward to address the crowd. 3 months ago, she said, we welcomed the Virith aboard our ship. We expected to build a diplomatic relationship. We expected formal meetings, careful negotiations, and professional exchanges. She smiled. We did not expect socks. Soft laughter moved through the crowd. But that is what happened. A young cub discovered that human thermal socks and smooth polymer floors make for excellent sliding. And somehow that simple discovery changed everything. It changed how we saw the Virith. It changed how they saw us. It changed what we thought diplomacy could be. She turned to look at Ambassador Rethka. Ambassador, your people are known throughout the galaxy as wise, dignified, and serious. But in these 3 months, we have seen another side of you. We have seen you laugh. We have seen you play. We have seen you slide down corridors with socks on your paws and joy on your faces. Bennett's voice softened. You have honored us by showing us your true selves. And in doing so, you have taught us something important about what it means to connect with another species. Not just through treaties and agreements, but through play, through laughter, through the simple, silly, wonderful act of sliding across a floor together. Ambassador Rethka stepped forward. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. Captain Bennett. People of the horizon's edge. My people have traveled among the stars for many centuries. We have met hundreds of species. We have formed alliances and partnerships with many of them. She paused. But I can say without hesitation that no species has touched our hearts the way you have. She looked around the room at the human faces watching her. When we first came aboard, we were careful, guarded. We had studied your species and we knew you could be dangerous. Your wars, your weapons, your capacity for destruction. We were not sure if we could trust you. Her whiskers twitched. Then my smallest cub stole your socks. And everything changed. She reached down and took little Kittis's paw in her own. My children have been happier on this ship than I have ever seen them. They have laughed more, played more, made friends they will remember for the rest of their lives, and they have reminded me of something I had forgotten. Her voice grew thick with emotion. They have reminded me what it feels like to be joyful, to be silly, to be young in spirit even when you are old in years. Your species gave that gift to them, and through them, you gave it to me. She looked at Captain Bennett. I will take many things home from this mission, trade agreements, cultural knowledge, new technologies. But the most precious thing I will take is a simple pair of soft socks, and the memory of sliding down your corridors with my children, feeling free and happy and alive. The room was silent. Several humans were crying openly. A few of the Virith delegation had tears running down their fur as well. Then little Kittis tugged at her mother's paw. Mother, she said, in a voice that everyone could hear, can we do one more slide, please? One more before we go? Rethka looked at Captain Bennett. Bennett smiled and nodded. I think, the captain said, that would be a perfect way to say goodbye. The formal ceremony dissolved into organized chaos. Someone put music on. Someone else started distributing socks to anyone who did not have them. Within minutes, humans and Virith were lining up at the starting point of the glide zone track. They slid in pairs, human and Virith together, side by side, down the smooth track. They slid in groups, crashing into each other at the end in piles of laughter and tangled limbs. They slid in races, cheering each other on, celebrating wins and losses with equal enthusiasm. Little Kittis slid with every human friend she had made. She slid with Megan Torres, the engineer who had been her first sliding partner. She slid with Noah Bennett, the big man she had taught to spin. She slid with Commander Reyes, who had gone from wanting to ban the activity to being one of its biggest fans. And finally, she slid with Hannah Cole. They stood at the starting line together, the human diplomatic officer, and the small alien cub who had started it all. "Thank you," Kitty said quietly. "Thank you for not being angry about the socks." Hannah knelt down to look into the cub's golden eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching us how to play." They slid together down the track, moving as one, their arms stretched out for balance, their faces showing identical expressions of pure joy. When they stopped at the end, Kittis hugged Hannah. It was the first time a Virith had hugged a human during the entire mission. The action was spontaneous, unplanned, and absolutely perfect. Hannah hugged her back, holding the small furry body close, feeling the cub's heart beat against her own. "Will you visit us?" Kittis asked. "On our homeworld? Will you bring socks?" "I will," Hannah promised. "I will bring all the socks I can carry." An hour later, the Virith shuttle departed from the horizon's edge. The humans lined the observation windows to watch it go. They waved even though they knew the Virith could not see them. They stayed at the windows until the shuttle was just a tiny point of light in the darkness. Then Captain Bennett called another meeting. "All right," she said, "let us talk about what comes next." The senior officers gathered in the conference room. Hannah, Daniel, Patricia, Megan, Victor, Greg, and several others. They looked tired but happy. "The diplomatic mission was a success," Bennett said. "Trade agreements signed, cultural exchange established, relations with the Virith stronger than anyone expected." She looked around the table. "But we all know that the real success of this mission cannot be measured in agreements or protocols. The real success was in the glide zone, in the corridors of Deck 7, in a young cub stealing socks and starting something wonderful." She tapped a document on her tablet. "I have been communicating with headquarters on Earth. They have been following our reports with great interest. The story of the sliding has spread throughout the fleet. Other ships are asking for guidance. They want to know how to replicate our success." She smiled. "I told them it cannot be replicated. It cannot be planned or scheduled or turned into a protocol. It happened because we let it happen, because we were willing to be surprised. Because we did not try to control everything." Victor spoke up. "What did headquarters say to that?" "They said they will think about it." Bennett's smile widened. "I think our way of doing things confuses them, but I also think they are starting to understand." Hannah raised her hand. "Captain, I have a suggestion." "Go ahead." "The Virith are just one species. There are hundreds of species in the galaxy that humanity has not yet met. Each of them will be different. Each will have their own ways of playing, their own ways of finding joy." She leaned forward. "What if we made it our mission to find out? What if we approached each new species with an open mind, ready to discover what makes them happy? Not just what they can trade with us. Not just what technology they can share, but what brings them joy, what makes them laugh, what makes them want to play." The room was quiet as people thought about this. "You are suggesting," Patricia said slowly, "that we make play a formal part of diplomacy." "I am suggesting that we make it a priority," Hannah said. "Not formal exactly, because the whole point is that it cannot be formal, but important, valued, recognized as something that matters." Victor nodded. "The sliding happened by accident, but it did not spread by accident. We made space for it. We scheduled time for it. We built a facility for it. We treated it as something worth protecting." "Exactly," Hannah said. "We can do that with every species we meet. Look for the things that bring them joy. Make room for those things. Let the play happen naturally, but be ready to support it when it does." Captain Bennett was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up. "Write it up," she said. "Turn it into a recommendation. We will send it to headquarters and see what happens." She looked around the table at her officers. "Humanity has given the galaxy many things: technology, ideas, resources. But maybe our greatest gift is something simpler. Maybe our greatest gift is the reminder that life should include joy, that play matters, that being silly together can change everything." She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "Out there, somewhere, there is a species we have not met yet. A species that has forgotten how to play, or never learned, or lost the ability long ago. And when we find them, we will do for them what we did for the Virith." She turned back to her officers. We will teach them to slide. 6 months later, the horizon's edge made contact with a species called the canary. They were tall, thin beings with hard shells and serious expressions. Their culture valued efficiency above all else. They had not played games in 10,000 years. Hannah Cole was part of the diplomatic team that met them. She brought gifts of technology and art and music. She also brought socks. It took 3 weeks before the first canary tried sliding. Another week before it became popular. Within 2 months, the canary were building their own sliding facilities on their home world. Their ambassador sent a message to Captain Bennett. "Thank you," the message said. "We did not know we were missing anything. Now we know. Now we understand. The joy is returning to our people." Bennett read the message in her quarters and smiled. Then she put on her socks and went to the glide zone. There was always time for one more slide, and somewhere across the galaxy on dozens of worlds, beings of all shapes and sizes were learning the same lesson that a small Virith cub had taught humanity 3 years ago. That sometimes, the most powerful thing you can share is not wealth or knowledge or power. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can share is a pair of soft socks. And the joy of gliding together towards something wonderful. The end.